Keenan Allen showed last year that he can still produce at an elite level, and we both want him to retire as a Charger, but would the Chargers move him for the right offer, or is he untradeable?
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 7 seasons, but this is our 5th season as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. I guess 8 and 6 now. I'm about to move into even more than that, but thank you guys for making us your first listen. We always appreciate the everydayers out there. But to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, we got a big one today. What are we getting into?
Well, Daniel, there's a lot of players that I would listen to as far as trade offers are concerned, but Keenan Allen is not one of them, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. Also, there's some pretty cool names that have been added to the Chargers coaching staff. Chief among them is the newest addition. That is the new assistant offensive line coach, Nick Hardwick. Man, it's so cool to see that. I'm really excited about that one. And then also, we got to figure out which one of the units, the offense or the defense, can we see turning things around faster?
That is a great question. There's a ton of great questions on this Chargers mailbag day. Love the Nick Hardwick signing. Can't wait to get to that. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. David, we have some great questions, but none of them, I think, really sparked the conversation that the first one we have here from Edgar Asst did as far as Keenan Allen's availability and what you would trade him for potentially. And he asked, if there is an offer made for Keenan Allen to be traded to another team, do you think we would do it considering Herbert has some say? And if so, what kind of capital do you guys think would suffice to let him go? For the record, I would never let that man walk. Charger for life. I know we all feel like Charger for life, David. Is there an offer you would accept? You're saying, hey, Justin Herbert to me is untradeable, but that word doesn't get thrown around a lot. You think Keenan Allen is untradeable?
I do. I think Keenan Allen is untradeable. He is a guy that's a foundational Charger for me. He's a leader of this franchise. He's a face of this franchise. And he's still uber productive. I mean, just came off of a season where he caught 108 passes for 1,240 yards and 7 touchdowns. I mean, the guy is still completely unguardable.
In 13 games, too.
Yeah,
right?
in 13 games. Yeah, and you know, he was dealing with that heel issue towards the end of the year. And, you know, probably if the Chargers were in the thick of it, he probably would have gave it a go. And, you know, those stats would have looked even more impressive. And so, you know, with Keenan, I've always been a proponent of his game is more timeless. This is a guy that can get open consistently. He understands what the defense is doing to him. It's not about speed for him. It's about the finesse. It's about the get-offs. It's about the route running. That's what, and the sticky hands, you know, the amazing hands. That's what Keenan brings to the table. And I think that is more timeless than anything else. And I just don't think that there is an offer for me that I would accept when it comes to trading Keenan Allen. I feel like this is a guy that's still uber productive and deserves to retire with the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, I think I could push you on that. I don't think you're turning down 2 first-round picks. You know, I mean, like, I think anything within reason is really what you're saying here. You know,
yes,
and nobody would give that up. So that's kind of a moot point. But I don't think anyone's untradeable outside Justin Herbert because I don't think there's an amount of even first-round picks that gives away Justin Herbert. I just don't.
Well, and he's just really not tradable because
he's actually totally. But like, I wouldn't trade him even if he didn't have it.
Yeah,
he's
not for all of King Midas' silver. Yeah.
Keenan Allen's going into his age 32 season. So how many more productive seasons can you get? Because we're assuming that he gets into extension at this point, right? To potentially lower the cap hit in 2024 and keep him around for a year or two after this upcoming season, right? Make it worth his while, obviously. But is he going to continue to ask for top receiver money? Does he want $30 million per season? Because he is coming off a season where he set the franchise record in 13 games, right? He has missed 11 games over the last 2 seasons, which he put into it. And I think the injury-prone moniker around Keenan Allen is way overblown. I do think he would have came back at the end of last season. And before that, he had been extremely healthy before 2022. So I think you could legitimately, to me, get 2 good seasons out of, like, you could feel good that you're going to get too close to what we saw last year's seasons from Keenan Allen left. That's through his age 33 season. So maybe you see a decline at 34 going forward. I don't think that's crazy at all.
Yeah.
If you could get a first round pick, and specifically near the top, a top half of the first round type of a pick, then it becomes more interesting to me, because this is the thing. Okay, so say you could get Malik Neighbors, because obviously you're not moving from 5 in this situation, right? You might also still have Mike Williams in this situation if you decide to keep him too. And you also, maybe you go, 13 or 14, you get someone like a Brock Bowers. So hey, Malik Neighbors and Brock Bowers is 10 years of those guys worth 2 years of potentially elite still Keenan Allen. I think that's still a fair question.
It is a fair question, because, I mean, you just don't know what Keenan Allen is going to do. I mean, obviously, I feel like his game is more timeless, but
it does age well to me. I think, yeah. but it can go crashing down quickly.
Father Time is undefeated, Daniel, and we've already seen some injuries, whether that's mismanagement with the medical staff or not, but the hamstring injury, it tended to linger, and it was re-aggravated. That was a serious problem. So we don't know, who is really to blame for that, but the fact is this: the older you get, the longer it takes to recover from injuries, and that's just a fact of life. So, yeah. I mean, that you have to kind of weigh and consider, because he is over the age of 30. He's already played in the NFL for 11 years. He has had some serious injuries that he has overcome in the past. Yeah. So, there's no guarantee that he's going to be able to stay healthy. And when you're talking about an extension, you're paying for production that you expect to happen in the future. You're not paying for the production that they've already provided. You obviously take that into account, but you can't pay for that. You got to pay for what you expect that player to bring to the table. And so when you weigh that versus potentially getting 2 blue chip players that you have control over for, 5 seasons, that does make things a little more difficult to be able to examine, because, I mean, at some point you have to take the emotion out of it, and you have to look at it from a business perspective and say, what at this point makes sense? Like Joe Ortiz said, we have to try to get out of these contracts before these players decline. And the fact is, the likelihood of the decline happening is a lot higher for Keenan than it is for a couple of players that you're bringing in from the draft.
Yeah, and those guys were all crapshoots. And I think the hard thing here is losing Keenan Allen in 2024 is devastating. The wide receiving group for the Chargers isn't as deep as I think a lot of people think it is, right? As far as if you don't have Keenan Allen or Mike Williams, right? I mean, in this scenario, you might keep Mike Williams, which is still kind of sketchy, just given the fact that he's missed, over 17 games the last 2 seasons.
Yeah.
You have Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnson left. Like, even if you got Malik Neighbors, like a Malik Neighbors, Joshua Palmer, Quentin Johnson trio is pretty tough to think that that's going to produce at an elite level in year 1 for Malik Neighbors, right? Or something like that. Long term, maybe it's the better option, and good teams do that. Good teams make the hard decisions, and they move on from players before they start declining, before they lose their value. But I think the thing is here is a first-round pick, I don't even know if it's in question, because I just don't think they would get that, right? I mean, the Bears did spend a second-round pick, which ended up being the 32nd overall pick for Chase Claypool. Kadarius Toney got a 3rd and a 6th from the Chiefs to the Giants. Devontae Adams, obviously a guy still at the top of his game, was a 1st and a 2nd. I don't think he gets that. I think it probably falls somewhere around a 2nd-round pick, and I wouldn't do it for that, because I think that kind of screws your offense in 2024.
Yeah, I'm not doing it for a 2nd-round pick. It's just not enough for me. Because the volatility as you go up in the picks gets higher and higher and higher. And I just think, there's still 2 to 3 solid years of production that I feel like we can expect from Keenan Allen. And to me, that's not worth the crapshoot of a 2nd-round pick. You just don't know what that player is going to turn into. You know what Keenan Allen is and what he brings to the table right now.
Yeah, I think that if you can get something for those other guys, you take it. A 2nd for Keenan Allen for what he's likely going to bring to the table for you this year. I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth giving it up for him. We also had Edward Matias, who asked a good question. When will cuts, trade, and restructures take place, before or after the draft? I would assume before, so we know what we're drafting. Thanks. It's going to be before, likely early March. I don't think we're going to see anything immediately, because the whole new regime just took over, and they have a lot of different decisions they're going to have to go through and kind of play out there. But usually, most of the Chargers cuts come in the 2nd week of March, historically. So I think that's when you can expect some things to happen. But we have more good news to get into, because the Chargers did bring in Nick Hardwick, their center, one of our favorite offensive linemen of all time, to be their coach, and also went with NaVorro Bowman. So the Chargers going to some former players to try to create this all-star coaching staff. We're going to talk about our excitement for those guys coming up right after this. First, though, I need to tell you guys to get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. That means you go pick the bet that you feel best about. All you have to do is put $5 on it. You get $150 back in bonus bets if that bet wins. And right now with the NBA, you can go with so many different things in your favorite NBA players with teams like quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. And you also have March Madness right around the corner. The NBA is about to heat up. Basketball is heating up. It's a great time to get in on that. But if you're still stuck on football and want to get one more out there, you can already pick who is going to be the champion of 2024. The Chargers right now have plus 3,000 odds, which ranks 12th in the NFL. Tell me in the comments how you feel about that. Should be better? Should it be worse? They're tied with a few different teams right there. I think it's right about right. First year of Jim Harbaugh. But if you guys want to get on the action, just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. David, it is a mailbag day, but we did get some great news on Tuesday because the Chargers brought in a fan favorite to be a coach on this coaching staff. And I love that, the integration of the old and the new. Getting someone like Nick Hardwick. This was a move I did not see coming by any means. Nick Hardwick is not someone who's even, collegiately coaching or had really been in the conversation to potentially take a role on this staff. But this is from Mike Garafolo, who says the Chargers are hiring former Pro Bowl center Nick Hardwick as their assistant offensive line coach. Sources say Hardwick, who played 11 seasons in San Diego, kicks off his NFL coaching career in LA after serving as an assistant coach for Westfield, Indiana High School. David, Nick Hardwick back in the fold with the Chargers, obviously very green, very raw. I'm very excited about it.
He is as a coach, but as a player, it doesn't get much better than Nick Hardwick. This is a guy who was a little bit undersized, but was tenacious, was incredibly intelligent, was a mauler. This is a guy that you can go to war with. He was a leader. This is a guy that was part of some of the best offensive lines in Chargers history. Back in the early 2000s, he went to the Pro Bowl the year that LT just went absolutely nuclear and MVP. Scored 31 touchdowns and won the MVP award for having a truly unbelievable season. He was a key part of that, providing for that guy who went off 1,815 rushing yards and 31 total touchdowns is insane.
Never to be done again.
But to bring in a guy who has that connection that is a Charger, right? And I just to think and kind of bring that into Jim Harbaugh's coaching staff, I think it's going to help the players be able to relate to him. I think it's going to help bring fans from Charger fans from all over the place closer to the team. And because you have somebody that somebody you're familiar with, and someone that you are confident understands how to play offensive line at a high level.
And I know it feels like a kind of, semantics type of thing, but brings a great energy too. The dude is just great locker room guy, has a good energy around him, has
real
a
down
great
to earth
personality.
Too. He's a good dude.
But also grinds, he is focused his passions. If you are unfamiliar with what he's done after football, the way that he is kind of used that passion for football into all other avenues of his life has been super impressive. He's like a shredded, fitness
yoked.
teacher now for people to lose weight and teach them. He is, I think, a great person for this job because he was undersized. And when you're undersized, what do you need the most? You need high IQ and you need fundamentals, right? Yeah. Fundamentals, high IQ are two of the things I would say the Chargers had the least of last year on their offensive line. Part of the big problem. This guy comes in with a great intensity. Also, an assistant offensive line coach under reportedly Mike Devlin, right? Someone who's done it before. He's not just the main guy. Yeah. That guy, you have a guy that knows what the drills need to be, knows how to get these new packages installed and this new offense installed. So you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You just get the good parts. And I love this. Jim Harbaugh is also a former Charger, just like Nick Hardwick, but he's also just been able to find talent everywhere. And that has been one of the main reasons he's been so dominant in football for so long. I think this is going to be another success story as someone who came up under Jim Harbaugh and he saw something in that turns out to be a really great coach. And I think something similar about the next guy we're going to talk about, because Jim Harbaugh is, according to Adam Schefter, bringing in his former linebacker NaVorro Bowman to coach their linebackers. He is someone who has a little experience, David, but man, I still remember that duo of him and Patrick Willis, one of the best duos of all time, and how good those dudes were, how much they put on those dudes' plates. I'm super excited for a new direction for this Chargers linebacker room.
Oh, yeah. If you're talking about physicality, NaVorro Bowman definitely brings that to the table. And also just super high-end production. 4-time first-team All-Pro linebacker, and most of those years was under Jim Harbaugh. 3-time Pro Bowler as well. This is a guy who really, has a really kind of well-rounded game at the linebacker position. But I think this is just another guy that's going to instill that physicality and toughness that the Chargers are going to really going to try to wash over this entire team. I think this is another addition that kind of brings that to the table. But, his bona fides are there. Yeah, maybe not as a coach, but he knows how to play this position at a very, very high level. He has that connection with Jim Harbaugh, and I think I'm excited for this. I think this is the guy who is going to continue to bring that nastiness, that mean streak to the table, to the middle of the Chargers defense. And, we've had a couple of linebackers in the past that, were able to bring that type of intensity, that type of energy, and I think this is a coach that can bring those type of players back into this Chargers defense.
Yeah, well, and he's 35 years old, which makes me feel incredibly old. I mean, this man's only a couple years older than Khalil Mack, right? He's going to be coaching. So it's crazy to get another young dude like this in the fold. And I think it's also important to know that he was a defensive analyst for Maryland in 2023, because the rest of the defensive staff that you're bringing along, for the most part, we're all in the Big Ten, and we're all college coaches last year. Yeah. And we're going to talk about one of them with Steve Clinkscale, too, because that, I think, is a good fit there. You're coming in with guys who already kind of know what systems need to be in place, are going to set him up, I think, for success, to tell him early on, right, what he expects from those linebackers. And I think when you have someone like Jim Harbaugh and someone who's already so familiar with not only NaVorro Bowman's game, but also his personality, right?
Yeah.
That he's going to be able to kind of let him know exactly what he wants. And I think NaVorro Bowman could be the type of player and coach, former player that could push these guys the right way. And I really love that. I think, getting guys like Deion Henley under his wing is something I'm excited to see, because you brought up physicality. I mean, to me, NaVorro Bowman, the instincts that dude had, his feel and coverage, his ability to cover, because he was kind of the cover guy, whereas Patrick Willis was more of the hammer, right? But this dude was all over the field, sideline to sideline. And every season he played under Jim Harbaugh, like you said, he was an all-pro. Missed all of 2014 with an injury, but every other season he played with him, all-pro. First team. All-pro. Exactly. Yeah. So let's get to this last coaching hire, David, because the Chargers also brought in Steve Clinkscale, who reversed his course and now is taking the Chargers defensive back job after initially saying that he was going to stay at Michigan. Jim Harbaugh drove a hard bargain, and he ends up in L.A.
Hey, when Jim Harbaugh wants something, he's going to get it. So also this seems to me, because when you look at Steve Clinkscale, he's a co-defensive coordinator. He was for the Michigan Wolverines last year. So I think this is a Jesse Minter type of move as well. It's like they obviously have some kind of working relationship already established. So this might be a Batman Robin situation where you wanted to bring somebody in that you're familiar with, that you already know how they operate, how they communicate, how they work, and you bring them in. And hey, you can't hate the results. The defense ranked top 30 in the country in pass defense and top 20 in pass defense efficiency each of his 3 years that he was there. That's including 2023. And also, by the way, his record while he was there, 40-3 at Michigan. That's pretty darn good there. So, I mean, I think I like this. I like the different infusion of college coaches and experience that you see across Jim Harbaugh's staff, and I think this is going to be another welcomed addition.
Yeah, we were talking about that. Like, it just feels like with this coaching staff, it's such a good blend. You have some very experienced guys like the Mike Devlins and the Greg Romans, obviously, guys like that. You have some guys who have been there, like a Ryan Ficken, keeping him in place. And then you have some former players to kind of bring that energy. And then you get a bunch of the most highly touted defensive coaches in the country from last season. Like, that is a good mix to me. As far as Steve Clinkscale goes, I mean, like, the big thing to me when watching Michigan's defense, which I've got to do a little of, obviously, since they hired Jim Harbaugh, the connectivity between the defensive backs is insane. To get those young players to be as connected, to hand off receivers, to be as well kind of run as that secondary was, going up against teams like Washington and Alabama and Ohio State, insane to me. And I think if you're going to bring in someone like Jesse Minter, a huge part of his success is going to be keeping those guys on the back end in the right positions and knowing exactly what to do. This is a dude that helps you bring those guys together, because it's going to be hard enough for Jesse Minter taking on the defensive coordinator role, right? Even though his background is also in defensive backs. You need someone that's going to be able to be with these guys at all times in every meeting, getting them connected, getting them on the same page, and being able to run what's a little bit of a complicated defense, but when run right, is really, really hard to combat. So I'm excited about the move. Obviously, Michigan tried very hard to keep him. Chargers tried harder to bring him in, and they got it done, and I think it's a great move. But we have more to get into on this Chargers mailbag day, including a tier who is asking which side of the Chargers football team will be able to turn things around more quickly. Is it more likely they'd have a top 5 offense or a top 10 defense? We're going to get into that coming up right after this. I do need to tell you guys about eBay Motors, though, because passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. David, we have much more to get to. I really think Atir's bringing a good question. Andy wants me to answer first, which is, a great, great honor. He usually wants David to answer first. But we have more, including a ton of draft questions that we're going to rapid fire. How many picks will they have? How far can they go down for Brock Bowers and still feel like they have a chance at him? So much good stuff. But also make sure you guys are checking out the first ever 24/7 national streaming sports channel, Locked On Sports Today. Go subscribe to that, because they are covering every sports every hour and every minute of the day, the only way that Locked On can, right? With their local experts covering teams that they cover every single day. And that's why it's the best. So go make sure you guys check out Locked On Sports Today, first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Atir called in. When Atir calls in, he gets on the show. He has a really, really tough question that we're going to answer. Let's see what he has.
Dan, David, this is Atir. I love you, my boys. Dan, this is for you. What is the fastest turnaround for Coach Harbaugh next season? Defense to be in top 10 or the offense to be in top 5? I'm taking the defense to go in top 10 because they're hungry and Jesse Minfield factor. You make your pick. You can go first, Dan. I love you, my baby. And then, David, I feel you. Both up.
I'm just glad he laid out the order so we knew. But I think it's the offense, and I think it goes back to the conversation we had with you yesterday, which was just about which side really needs more help. And when you look at the defensive side of things, I mean, you could be talking about 6, potentially 7 starters that they're going to have to replace. Let's also not forget that Brandon Staley tried to fix their defense for 3 seasons and could never figure it out and get better than 20th in scoring defense. I think it's the offense that's closer to being a top 5 unit, and we've seen it. To me, with Justin Herbert, the floor is the 15th ranked offense. I think you could put whatever surrounding cast around them. If he is healthy, he's going to have a top 15 scoring offense. That's just what I think the floor is. So to see them getting back to a top 5 team like they were in 2021, where we've seen him do it before, giving him a running game, right, giving him some better protection, I don't think it's out of the question at all that they get to top 5. Getting to a top 10 defense, David, is something that we haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah, and it's funny because you look at the scoring numbers and it's like, well, it's only a 3-point difference between 23rd, which is where the Chargers ended last year, and a top 10 spot, which is 20.9. So it's like, well, they could probably do that.
With the defense, you're saying?
Yeah, with the defense. Yeah. But it's a lot more
complicated, a field goal a game.
A lot more difficult than that. I mean, you're bringing in a new defense where you're going to have to bring in a bunch of new players to try to fit that system. I think that's going to be a little bit too much to ask. But like we talked about also yesterday, get him a middle-of-the-pack defense and watch how many games Justin Herbert is going to win if you are able to provide that. But when you have Justin Herbert, and now you have an offensive coordinator that is going to focus on fixing the running game, I think it's going to be a really nice sight to be able to see Justin Herbert have a good running game to be able to play action off of. and to be able to put games away. And also, you just look at the top 5, top 6 scoring teams in the NFL. They all run the ball at a very, very high level, a very efficient level. So if you factor that into the equation, and you have Justin Herbert with the weapons that are currently there, and just some better coaching, I think, on the offensive line, I think it is a lot more plausible for me to see the Chargers achieve a top 5 offensive unit rather than defense.
Sometimes the best offense is a good defense and vice versa, right? If your defense gets a ton of turnovers, sets you up in a good spot, that helps. If you have an offense that is churning out time, staying on the field, limiting the other team's possessions, that's going to help your defense a lot in a per-game status, So let's get to this next one here, because I think if we knew that the Chargers had a Malik Neighbors or a Brock Bowers, I could buy even more into a top 5 offense in 2024. But Luis Bensman asks here, obviously it's way too early, but a trade down to get Brock Bowers would be great. How long do you think we could drop and still get him? This is a great question, David. Trading back, getting Brock Bowers is a dream. What do you think? Where do you think, I guess, is the latest spot they could trade down to and still reasonably feel like they could get him?
Yeah, this is a really tough question because for me, I think there's no guarantee that the Tennessee Titans might not take Brock Bowers at number 7. And
I mean, that would be to the dismay of Locked On Titans host Tyler Rowland. He does not want that to happen.
Yeah,
I mean, they have bigger needs, but hey, I mean, getting him for Will Levis makes sense.
Sure, but hey, if they decide not to do that, I think you can reasonably expect Atlanta not to take a tight end when they have Kyle Pitts. So I think probably 9 or 10 is probably the furthest that you're going to be able to go back without running into teams that could really start using another tight end. I think Minnesota's probably set. That's probably the very, very back end of it, because then you have Denver, and I think Denver would absolutely take a Brock Bowers to pair with whatever quarterback. I mean, hey, they need a quarterback.
They don't have a quarterback
too. Yeah, they need a quarterback too. So yeah, I think for me it's probably in the 9-10 range is where I would feel comfortable with that.
So for me, if it's not Tennessee, right, if he makes it past 7, I think he could slide. I truly do, because I think the Jets need a tackle to protect Aaron Rodgers, especially if they're running it back with Aaron Rodgers this year. So I don't think they're doing it. The Bears have Cole Kmet at 9, right?
Yeah.
They have a very good tight end at 9. Vikings at 11 have TJ Hawkinson, who was like the best tight end last year, right?
Yeah.
Could Las Vegas or Denver try to trade up for a quarterback potentially with you? So maybe that puts you at 14 or 12, 13. Then you could take him there, because the thing is the Broncos could go there, but they also could go with a quarterback, right? They could go with J.J. McCarthy or someone like that.
Sure.
The Raiders just took Michael Mayer, so I don't think they're doing it.
No.
Saints and Colts, 14, 15, harder to figure out. Potentially he could slide that far, but I feel like if you get in ahead of that, there's a chance you could get him in the double digits if nobody trades up to try to go get him. So I think that's a realistic-ish thing. But yeah, he'd still have to make it past the Titans, and there's some other teams who could try to go up and get him. But those other teams, with the tackles that are available too, and the defensive needs that some of these teams have, I think he could slide. Yeah. Let's get to this from Chris Saiz here, who asks, Chargers currently have 7 picks in the draft, I believe. By the end of the draft, how many draft picks do you predict us having or ending up with in total? So, Dave, let's go speed round here for these last couple questions. They have 7 now. How many does Joe Ortiz end up with?
I think he's going to have 9. I think he's going to make a couple of trades. I think they're also going to get a comp pick as well for one of the free agents. So I'm going to go 9.
Yeah, they're supposed to get a 7th-round pick, I believe, for Drew Tranquill potentially. Yeah. So they could have 8 already. I'm going to say 9 is safe too. I would probably go 9. The Ravens had 11 picks in 2022, 10 in 2020, 12 picks in 2018. So it
awesome.
Kind of goes with their history right over there. Let's get to this from Ivan here, who asks, over under on how many big boys, linemen, offensive and defensive, do we draft? 3.5 is where he's putting it, David. Are you going over or under?
I'm going to go under. I have it at 3. I think it's going to be
it's a good over-under.
It is. It's a really tough one. But, I mean, there's a lot of holes that the Chargers have. So.
But what if they have 9 picks?
Yeah. I mean, even then, I'm gonna put it under. I'm going 3.
Okay, so, I mean, him gaining more picks makes it tougher. The other thing is does edge rusher count as a defensive lineman? I mean, now they're outside linebackers. You're going to a 3-4, but, like, how much do you have to weigh to get considered into this? Because I could see a scenario for sure. If you have 9 picks, that 4 of them are some version of, offensive line, guard and tackle, right?
Yeah.
Defensive interior line, and an edge rusher I could see happening.
Well, center,
for sure.
too, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Center, first of all, of course, number 1, but then potentially taking either a guard or a tackle, right? So that could be 2 offensive linemen, could be 2 defensive linemen. They could definitely take an edge rusher.
It could easily be over, yeah.
It could be if they have 9, right? And that's what we think they could get to. So I think it's a great question there from Ivan. If they stay at 7 right now, I'd probably go under. if they can get to 9 or around there, I could definitely see that happening. A really full revamp of the trenches, which I think we all expect. Maybe it takes a little more time, but I love the thought process there. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. We have more great stuff coming for you guys the rest of the week, because it is your team every day. Going to be getting some stay or go soon. Maybe some cap casualties to talk about as well. And any news that comes, we will be there with it the next day talking about it. So to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. You can follow me and David on Twitter, me at Dan Talk Sports, David at Dro Talk SD, in the show's page at Locked On LAC, where we post the show every day, as well as on our Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. Thank you for calling into the voicemail line, a tier 323-524-7924. We like getting that kind of old school sports radio vibes. If you want to call in, leave your 30-second Chargers question, you're very likely to get on the show. But that's going to wrap things up for today. We'll be back with you guys tomorrow. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.